Other news, Iran has pointed the finger of blame for the current situation in Ukraine at Washington. The country's supreme leader added that Kiev's suffering is just the latest in a long line of orchestrated events by America.
Basically, the U.S. regime creates crises, lives off of crises and feeds on various crises in the world. Ukraine is another victim of this policy.
Now, to get more information on that, we're going to cross live now to Fawad Izadi, Associate Professor at the University of Tehran. Thanks a lot for joining us. First, I want to talk about the Iran Supreme Leader's statement that he thinks that the American government and Western countries are to blame for the Ukrainian crisis and much else besides. What do you think is the logic behind that claim?
And Iran has been suffering from aggressive American policies for the last 40 years or so. So the country, the people, the leadership, politicians, ordinary citizens are very much familiar with American aggression. And what he was talking about today was history, the fact that there was a coup in 2014 in Kiev, the fact that the Russian minority, the Russian-speaking minority in Ukraine was under a lot of pressure. The fact that 14,000 people have been killed since 2014, most of them victims of aggression that's coming from the other side. And if the Americans did not orchestrate the coup in 2014, things would be much more different. We remember John McCain coming to the Maidan in Kiev, people like Chris Murphy, even John Kerry, Victoria Nuland, who is now the political director at the State Department, sort of engaging in a very open intervention in internal affairs of another country. He said that obviously Iran does not support wars. Wars generally end up in civilian deaths. That's not something that Iran supports. But Iran realizes who is at fault, and it's the United States that has started this problem.
Well, what are your thoughts on the supply of weapons to Ukraine coming from the West? Do you think this is going to shift the conflict?
Generally, the Americans engage in this type of activities. In the past, in different countries, they want to fight their enemies using other people's soldiers. And this is actually one of the things that Iran's leader talked about today, that relying on the West and sort of accepting Western promises is a big mistake. And I think the president of Ukraine realizes this fact, that they encouraged, the United States encouraged Ukraine to join NATO starting in 2008. And now they are just sending some weapons. So relying on promises that's coming from the West is a mistake. And that's something that Iran's leader talked about today.
Well, how does it look from the perspective of Iran, these peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? Do you think they're going to yield positive results, or are they just going to flop?
I think the Russian government wanted to find a peaceful solution for the last 8 years. If the Ukrainian government implemented the Minsk agreement, you would not have any fighting today. If the Ukrainian government realized that this idea of joining NATO is not good for Ukraine, you would not have the current situation. And I think the Russian government still is interested in resolving this issue through peaceful means. That is why they are talking to the other side. And it's the decision that the Ukrainian government needs to make, whether they want to continue the failed policies that have resulted in the current situation, or they want to change course. That's the option they have. That's the choice they have.